What's going on, my fellow YouTubers? Dragon Speed Shop here, bringing you a video today. Before I begin this video, I want to say thanks to all my subscribers that I've gotten over the last week since my channel's been up and going. That's awesome. I appreciate it. All the views that I've got on it, it helps me. It makes me want to continue making these channels. The other thing is I've got a little bit of bad news. I shot a video a couple days ago. I lost the footage. I don't know what happened with it. I'm still a noob, so kind of hang in with me, guys. I'll get this down eventually. The other thing is don't forget to check the description box. I'm going to put a couple of links in there so you can follow me on, like Facebook and all that, so you know when videos come out a lot quicker, and among other news. So I guess in this video I'll kind of explain what I've done with all these parts from the video that I lost, and kind of give you a little bit of tips of what I do with it in the process. So we'll start off with the motor. The first thing I do before I assemble any components on the motor is all the mounting tabs underneath the intake, underneath the head. I cut all those mounting tabs off. I like a little bit of a leeway from the head sliding side to side or front to back to make all the components, fit right. I start with the heads, do the intake. When I glue down the intake, I put a pretty good bead of glue on the intakes where it meets the heads. So when I squish those together, a little bit of glue comes out, and it kind of makes a nicer gap, nice tight gap. I ended up coming back and putting a little bit of glue underneath the intake on the front and the back side. After getting everything adjusted so the heads were sitting perfect side to side, front to back, they looked right. They were sitting on the block, nice and tight and right. So I ended up just kind of filling those in. You might be able to see a little shiny line. That's just the glue that I put on there. Once I prime it and stuff, you won't notice that. And before I prime, give it a good bath. But I ended up doing that on the back of the intake also. When it came to the suspension parts, I kind of look at it at every direction, every view, make sure there's no extra flashing on the parts from when these get cast from the factory. Just to make sure all, the sway bar and torsion rods here, everything's nice and round. No mold lines or anything that was visible. The other thing I end up doing on most parts are kind of right here. I end up sanding this just really, really lightly, just kind of give it a rounded edge. Most cars, they don't have real sharp edges on components like this, so that's a really good thing to do. And then once I was sanding, I kind of pre-assemble everything where it's supposed to go in the car and make sure everything fits right. Before I prime, before I paint, make sure I look, under gaps here. Make sure everything's fitting like it should be. Like I said in my last video, this is going to be a really super, super clean competition build. So the back of the axle had a really bad mold line, so I ended up having to sand that out, but also trying to keep the detail here, where the ring of the pumpkin cover is, to keep that ring all the way around. So taking a little bit of time there to make sure that detail still stays there. I ended up having to do pretty much the same thing on the front side of it. It had a bad mold line. I ended up looking at the springs and everything, and I just took the same thing, just to sandpaper and sand real lightly, just to kind of round the top of the leaf springs. I know leaf springs in real cars, they're not sharp edge on the top, they're kind of rounded. So little details like that, kind of help it stand out among itself. And the other thing I ended up doing is working on this floor pan. A lot of work went into this. I started off on the front end, had a bad mold line that ran all the way down here, sanded that all out, sanded both sides of it, rounded the top of the frame here, same thing I did on all the other parts, make sure those are all nice and rounded. Took all the extra, you know, flashing stuff like that. The other thing I end up doing is I end up taking the body, doing this about 500 billion times, getting it where it goes, and then you know, when you glue your model together and stuff, you end up gonna kind of squeezing this. So I always end up taking a look at the gap that runs here from the body and the pan to make sure that gap's right. I end up looking in the wheel wells to make sure that gap's nice and, you know, it's sitting tight to the body. There isn't any big gaps. You know, do the same thing when you move it, adjust it over here. Let's see, that's where it sits. You know, doing the same thing to make sure, you know, looking inside the wheel wells, make sure that gap's nice and tight. That took quite a bit of work to actually make that all fit correctly, and it's worth doing. The other thing I noticed on this kit is the exhaust is molded in, but the top of the exhaust here was square. So I ended up just kind of rounding that exhaust so it wasn't square right there. Especially when the floor goes in, you're going to be able to see a nice rounded edge there when, you know, this comes to judging. That's going to be really nice to see. Couple other little tips is just kind of take your time. Don't rush doing this stuff. It's not worth it. You know, just take your time, look at everything really closely. I don't know what more I can tell you guys about that, but just take your time. You know, there's no rush. You're gonna get a better quality model at the end of all of this if you just take your time and look at all these little steps. You know, they do add up. They do make a difference in the overall look of your model. You'll be much happier with the end result. I hate to sound like a broken record most of the times, but it really does make a difference in just taking your time and doing little tiny tricks, you know, sanding the edges and things like that will make a world of difference to the end result of your model. So I want to say again, I appreciate every single person that's taken a look at my videos, that's taken a like on my videos, that's hit that subscribe button. You know, you guys make me want to continue doing these videos, so keep up that good work. Until next time, this is Dragon Speed Shop, and I'm out.